Welcome to We've Got a Country to Say, brought to you by my friends at InvestYRefy.com. Invest in America like I do. And by Freedom Chat. Freedom Chat has true end-to-end encryption, no storage of messages on the server, and no commercial use of user data. That way you can speak freely and message privately. Download the app today and subscribe to my Freedom Chat channel at Larry Elder for exclusive posts and never-before-seen content. We also thank Epoch Times, Old Glory Bank, Patriot Mobile, and El Cholo. Be sure to like and subscribe to our podcast. Make sure to follow or subscribe to my channel on whatever platform you're using, whether X, YouTube, Facebook, or Rumble, and be sure to patronize our sponsors. And if you don't patronize our sponsors, well...
So, you dare to aid us?
To what, sir?
Strike him, Centurion, very roughly.
Ah! Oh, and, throw him to the floor, sir?
What?
Throw him to the floor again, sir?
Oh, yes, throw him to the floor, please.
We know where you live. Happy New Year, everybody. It has been a grim beginning of the year, hasn't it? A Cybertruck explodes outside of the Trump Las Vegas hotel. Apparently, the only person killed was the individual inside the Cybertruck. And a domestic terrorist took a car, rammed it in front of a bunch of people on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, killing at least 15. The driver/murderer/terrorist gets out of the car, starts shooting, and he is shot. A couple of officers were wounded. The wounds were not lethal. Within hours after the New Orleans terrorist attack, hundreds of anti-Israel protesters gathered in Times Square, waving Palestinian flags, calling for an intifada revolution. One female demonstrator said, quote, "We're sending you back to Europe, you white bees." Except she didn't say bees.
Go back. Shut up, you ghetto. You're a ghetto. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. Come in.
You make us proud. We are proud to be in this struggle. We know who our enemies are. We know who we're fighting against.
And we're sending you back to Europe. You white. Go back to Europe. That's where you get
Go back to Europe. Go back to Europe. One speaker, through a megaphone, said, and I'm quoting, 2024 was a year of struggle against the crime of Zionism. The FBI initially, and Joe Biden initially, did not use the word terrorism. Later on, Biden said it was terrorism-inspired or ISIS-inspired. But this is what MSNBC's Barbara McQueen said about the attack.
Say it causes them to believe that this was an act of terrorism. We know that he used a truck ramming, which is sometimes used by violent extremists, but it could also be somebody who is disgruntled. You know, in a school shooting, nobody jumps immediately to a terrorist act. And so here, certainly it's not simply his name that caused people to say this is a terrorist act. And so my hunch is, and what I would be asking if I were a reporter is, what are the factors that have caused you to label this a terrorist act?
I wonder, she said, what caused law enforcement to quickly go to terrorism label. Well, maybe, I don't know, perhaps because of the ISIS flag that was hanging on the truck. Samsud Din Jabbar, American citizen, living in Texas, apparently born in Beaumont, Texas, served in the military, was at Fort Bragg, was in Afghanistan, apparently in Afghanistan the same time the person in the Cybertruck in Las Vegas served in Afghanistan. There is an investigation into finding out whether or not the two incidents are linked. So far, doesn't appear to be evidence, although there are some coincidences. The agent in charge said that it is unlikely at first, regarding the New Orleans attack, that the attacker acted alone. Then throughout the day, they began walking that back, and now the working assumption is that he did, in fact, act alone. But we still don't know. There still is an ongoing investigation. But hundreds of anti-Israel protesters going to Times Square, chanting Palestinian slogans. 2024 was a year of struggle against the crime of Zionism. Why are these people here? You hate this country. It is really easy to leave. Leave. You think there's a Arab or Muslim country where you have more rights, more freedoms, more opportunities for prosperity than here? More religious freedom than here? More tolerance than here? Then leave. By all means, get out. I'll tell you something else. Last 4 years, minimum of 10, maybe 12 million illegal aliens in this country, unvetted, from virtually every single country in the world. Hundreds have been intercepted who are on the terror watch list, and those are the ones that we caught. Who knows how many people are in this country with a desire to burn it down, set it on fire, and to kill Americans for the crime of not being Muslim? How many? How many in the last 4 years? Frankly, I've said this before, I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often. The FBI has investigations into domestic terrorism in every one of the 50 states, every single state. And the fact that this doesn't happen more often, to me, is mind-boggling. It's easy to get into this country, easy to get into our infrastructure. We've got Chinese nationals somehow casing our military installations. Over 10, 12 million people in the country illegally in the last 4 years alone. 2 million, quote, known gotaways, whatever that means. And at least 1 million or so unknown gotaways, whatever that means. Hundreds on the terror watch list. People coming in from countries where we had a Muslim travel restriction because there was no way to vet the people coming in here. Buckle up. I think we're going to have more attacks.
Hi, folks. You may be hearing a lot about Yrefy these days. Well, it's true. Investors all over the country are earning a high fixed rate of return, and they don't care what happens with the stock market or the Fed. And it's true, your interest is compounded daily, you're paid monthly, and there are absolutely no fees. And yes, it's true, there is no attack on your principal if you ever need your money back. When you invest with Yrefy like I do, you are in control. You can turn your income on or off, compound it, whatever you choose. You don't have to worry about doom and gloom economic news, and you can have peace of mind that you'll receive your statement every month with no surprises. Would you like some more information? Just call 877-80-INVEST, that's 877-80-INVEST, or log on to investyrefy.com, that's investyrefy.com. Yrefy, do well by doing good.
Let me ask you a question. How many of you are concerned about the invasion of privacy that is currently going on by the Biden administration? Biden's DOJ is invading individuals' private messages and targeting them based on their political affiliation, and that's why I partnered with Freedom Chat, a private social messaging app that, like me, believes privacy is your fundamental human right. Freedom Chat has variable end-to-end encryption, built-in screenshot protection, no storage of messages on their servers, and no commercial use of user data. I'm such a fan of Freedom Chat, in fact, that I have created my own private channel that you can subscribe to for exclusive content, including never-seen images, videos, and posts. Simply download the app, or if you're on Android, join their waitlist. Search for my channel and subscribe. No one can see the channels that you are subscribed to or the posts that you react to. It's your own perfectly curated private news feed. Speak freely and message privately with Freedom Chat. Download the app today and subscribe to my channel at Larry Elder for exclusive posts and never-before-seen content.
Is there anything that President Trump to take from
Decency. 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 Everybody deserves a shot. Everybody. Can you imagine Jimmy Carter walking by someone who needs something and just keep walking? Can you imagine Jimmy Carter referring to someone by the way they look or the way they talk? I can't. I can't. You know, I think the end of the deal here is that one of the reasons why we're looked to by the rest of the world, for the bulk of our nationhood, we've laid out what our values are. We've said what we believe. It's not just in the Declaration, we hold these truths to be self-evident, but there's a feeling. The rest of the world looks to us. And he was worth looking to. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
President Jimmy Carter, at the age of 100, has died. The Democrats, except for some Democrat Jews, which I'll get to in a minute, and the legacy media, their spin is that, okay, his presidency was a mixed bag. He had a lot of bad luck, but he was a moral man of great decency, and he was a fantastic ex-president. Okay, let's get serious. Start with the fact that he is an election denier. Trump denies an election, and the left and the media want to banish him from the planet. But Carter claimed the Russians got Trump elected, and nobody said squat.
And there's no doubt that the Russians did interfere in the election. And I think the interference, although not yet quantified, if fully investigated, would show that Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered on his behalf.
Never mind that Obama's DHS Secretary, Jay Johnson, said the Russians failed to change a single vote tally.
I know of no evidence that through cyber intrusions, votes were altered or suppressed in some way.
And yet, thanks to Mr. Carter and Hillary Clinton, who called the election of 2016 stolen, referred to Trump as illegitimate, two-thirds, I kid you not, two-thirds of Democrats believe the Russians changed vote tallies to elect Donald Trump. Now, this happened during what people called Jimmy Carter's excellent post-presidency. More on this later. Carter, I will give you this, got two things right. He deregulated the airlines and appointed Paul Volcker as Fed chairman, who was retained by President Reagan, Carter's successor. Volcker pursued policies that ultimately reduced inflation. Now to the other side of Carter's ledger. Let's start with Iran.
Iran, because of the great leadership of the Shah, is an island of stability in one of the more troubled areas of the world.
Decency.
Carter pressured the Shah of Iran, who was friendly to America in a tough neighborhood, into releasing what Carter considered to be political prisoners, many of whom we would today call Islamic terrorists. They brought down the government and created the Islamic, air quotes, republic that became the world's greatest exporter of terror and backer of terror groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis.
I did criticize the president because of our undercutting of what was a stalwart ally, the Shah of Iran. And I am not at all convinced that he was that far out of line with his people or that they wanted that to happen. The Shah had done our bidding and carried our load in the Middle East for quite some time. And I did think that it was a blot on our record that we let him down. Have things gotten better? The Shah, whatever he might have done, was building low-cost housing, had taken land away from the mullahs and was distributing it to the peasants so they could be landowners, things of that kind. But we turned it over to a maniacal fanatic who has slaughtered thousands and thousands of people, calling it executions.
One country that today has a reputation for being the leading exporter of terrorism around the world, and that's Iran. And today, here's coming from a kid born and raised in Iran in 1978. The year I'm born, 78, 3 months later, boom, revolution starts. And Iran's never been the same since 1979.
Decency. Decency.
Iranian thugs took American diplomats and employees in the embassy hostage and held them for 444 days, releasing them literally minutes after Reagan was sworn in January 20, 1981.
Fall 1979, President Jimmy Carter is looking ahead to the next year's election, his hopes for a second term already dimming amid rampant U.S. inflation driven by a global oil shock. But his re-election chances would be derailed entirely by the Iran hostage crisis. In January, the Islamic Revolution had forced the U.S.-backed Shah into exile. Terminally ill, he was hospitalized in New York. Backers of the new leader Ayatollah Khomeini demanded the Shah be extradited to face trial. The U.S. refused. On November 4th, to pressure Washington, 400 Islamic students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 66 employees hostage.
We're using every available channel to protect the safety of the hostages and to secure their release.
14 hostages were released on humanitarian grounds. Carter attempted to raise the pressure on Tehran, breaking off diplomatic relations, imposing a trade embargo, and freezing Iranian assets. When those measures failed, the president decided to send U.S. troops to liberate the hostages. But the operation would become a fiasco. An army helicopter collided with a refueling tanker in the Iranian desert, killing 8 U.S. servicemen. The episode, a severe embarrassment for Carter.
The mission on which they were embarked was a humanitarian mission. It was not undertaken with any feeling of hostility toward Iran or its people.
The Iranian regime then entered into talks with Carter's rival for the White House, Republican Ronald Reagan. Severely criticized for his handling of the crisis, Carter was roundly defeated in 1980. The remaining hostages were freed on Reagan's inauguration day in January 1981, after 444 days in captivity.
Israel. Carter was hostile towards Israel, even writing a book in his post-presidency in which he referred to that country as an apartheid state.
The word apartheid is exactly accurate. You know, this is an area that's occupied by two powers. They're now completely separated. The Palestinians can't even ride on the same roads that the Israelis have created or built in Palestinian territory. The Israelis never see a Palestinian except their Israeli soldiers. The Palestinians never see an Israeli except at a distance, except the Israeli soldiers. So within Palestinian territory, they're absolutely and totally separated, much worse than they were in South Africa, by the way. And the other thing is, the other definition of apartheid is one side dominates the other.
Decency.
Palestinians living in Israel enjoy more rights than any other Middle Eastern country. As to the domination in Palestinian areas, it's because time and time again, the Palestinian leadership shows they have zero interest in true, peaceful coexistence with Israel.
I understand, I'll translate, don't worry. It's for the majority of Arab speakers here. Okay, this is a Palestinian, not affiliated with Hamas according to what he says, just a citizen. And he's saying, Dad, Allahu Akbar, I just killed 10 Jews. I have their blood on my hand. I stole her phone. I'm speaking with you from her phone. This is a Palestinian, which you will call a civilian if the IDF eliminates. So this is one of the many videos that Hamas uploaded, and they themselves were proud of killing, guess what, Arabs and Jews in the 7th of October. And just before I start actually my speech, you know, it's funny, Mr. President, you as an Egyptian talking about the land of Palestine and stalling. You know, back in 1948, when the Arabs did not agree to the partition plan and the Jews did, and they opened the war and they lost the war, but you know what? They kept the West Bank and they kept Gaza. Do you know who actually ruled Gaza between 48 to 67 and who ruled the West Bank between 48 to 67? No, not Israel. It was Egypt in Gaza, and it was Jordan illegally in the West Bank. Now, here's a question, rhetorical one, because I really don't care about your answer. From 48 to 67, you as an Egyptian, you should know that Egypt controlled Gaza, yet they never offered a state to the Palestinians to take, which right now they are actually fighting for. They're also fighting for the West Bank. They're fighting for borders of 67. That's at least what the Palestinian Authority wants. Not like Muhammad al-Kurd and all the distinguished speakers who wants the annihilation of Israel from the river to the sea, right? But here's the thing. How much I bet with you that you have no clue which river and which sea, but you are like zombies. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Listen carefully. If you want to free Palestine, first free Palestine from Hamas. First free Palestine from the terrorists. And what's so crazy is that the majority of you have never been in the land of Israel, have never lived in the land of Israel, and then you have the audacity to come to speak to an Arab who was born in Haifa, the largest mixed city in Israel, raised in Nazareth, one of the largest Arab city in Israel, and then you get the audacity to tell me if I live under apartheid regime? Shame on you! You have no clue what you're talking about.
Carter also supported Hamas, I kid you not, and advised terrorist Yasser Arafat. In an article called Jimmy Carter's True Legacy is Disastrous Anti-Semitism, published in the Daily Caller, Abraham Katzman writes the following. Embarrassingly, for a former U.S. president, Carter even became a shill for Hamas. He advocated U.S. recognition of Hamas, denied that Hamas refused to recognize Israel, notwithstanding the genocidal Hamas charter. He parroted former Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat's preposterous claim that the PLO never advocated for the annihilation of Israel, notwithstanding, again, the genocidal PLO covenant. Incredibly, Carter wouldn't even condemn suicide bombings against Israel on moral grounds, but only as counterproductive tactics in the cause of Palestinian liberation. Toxic anti-Semitism pulsates through the Carter record. End of quote.
Decency. Decency.
This brings us to the Soviet Union and Afghanistan. When Carter ran for the presidency, he said that we needed to get over our inordinate fear of communism.
Being confident of our own future, we are now free of that inordinate fear of communism, which once led us to embrace any dictator who joined us in that fear. I'm glad that that's being changed.
He kissed Soviet leader Brezhnev on the cheek as an act to demonstrate that, we should view the communist nation differently. In exchange for this act of outreach, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan.
Recently, there has been another very serious development which threatens the maintenance of the peace in Southwest Asia. Massive Soviet military forces have invaded the small, non-aligned, sovereign nation of Afghanistan, which had hitherto not been an occupied satellite of the Soviet Union. 50,000 heavily armed Soviet troops have crossed the border and are now dispersed throughout Afghanistan.
Now, because of the invasion of Afghanistan, Carter canceled our participation in the 1980 Olympics held in the Soviet Union. This ticked off American athletes who trained their whole lives for this. Would the invasion have happened had Carter not kissed the butt of the Soviet Union leader and been perceived as weak and naive? We'll never know. But consider the weakness displayed by Joe Biden from the pullout from Afghanistan and how it emboldened adversaries like China, Iran, Hamas, North Korea, and others. Speaking of North Korea, they had not yet become a nuclear power, and Bill Clinton and the UN were going to impose sanctions to stop North Korea from becoming one. Enter ex-President Jimmy Carter, who went to North Korea with the reluctant support of Bill Clinton and supposedly negotiated a deal to end North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Bill Clinton bought into it and made this absurd announcement.
I am pleased that the United States and North Korea yesterday reached agreement on the text of a framework document on North Korea's nuclear program. This agreement will help to achieve a long-standing and vital American objective, an end to the threat of nuclear proliferation on the Korean Peninsula. This agreement is good for the United States, good for our allies, and good for the safety of the entire world. It reduces the danger of the threat of nuclear spreading in the region. It's a crucial step toward drawing North Korea into the global community. After meeting with my chief national security advisors and at their unanimous recommendation, I am instructing Ambassador Gallucci to return to Geneva on Friday for the purpose of signing an agreement. The United States has been concerned about the possibility that North Korea was developing nuclear weapons since the 1980s. 3 administrations have tried to bring this nuclear program under international control. There is nothing more important to our security and to the world's stability than preventing the spread of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. The United States has an unshakable commitment to protect our ally and our fellow democracy, South Korea.
Decency.
Jimmy Carter was duped, Clinton was duped, and North Korea now has a nuclear arsenal. This brings us to the Persian Gulf War that took place after Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Carter tried to prevent the war by undercutting President George Herbert Walker Bush and telling allies not to support him. This is from an article in the National Review called "Jimmy Carter Was a Terrible President and an Even Worse Former President." Quote, on January 10, 1991, just 5 days before a deadline that had been set for Saddam to withdraw from Kuwait, Carter wrote to key Arab leaders urging them to abandon their support for the U.S., undermining months of careful diplomacy by the Bush administration. It is one thing for a former president to express opposition to a policy of a sitting president, but by actively working to get foreign leaders to withdraw support for the U.S. days before troops were to be in the crossfire, Carter was taking actions that were closer to treason than they were to legitimate peace activism. End of quote.
Decency.
Americans have had enough of supporting companies that hate our values. Tired of compromise? So am I. It's time to switch to Patriot Mobile, America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They are an example of putting the cause ahead of profits, and that's why I'm proud to partner with them. Patriot Mobile offers dependable nationwide coverage, giving you access to all 3 major networks, which means you get the same coverage you've been accustomed to without funding the left. When you switch over to Patriot Mobile, you're sending a message that you support the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the sanctity of life, and our military vets and our first responder heroes. Their 100% U.S.-based customer service team makes it easy to switch, keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their team will help you find the best plan for your needs. Just go to patriotmobile.com/Larry or call 972-PATRIOT. That's patriotmobile.com/Larry or call 972-PATRIOT. Get free activation when you use the offer code Larry. Join me and make that switch today. patriotmobile.com/Larry, patriotmobile.com/Larry or call 972-PATRIOT. Located in the heart of Sugar House, Salt Lake City, Utah, family-owned El Cholo is a vibrant Mexican restaurant offering a unique dining experience across 2 stylish levels. With a beautiful bar, chic design, and stunning views of the Wasatch Mountains, it's the perfect spot for both casual meals and special occasions. El Cholo can host up to 250 people, making it an ideal venue for events like weddings, parties, or corporate gatherings. Whether you're enjoying authentic Mexican dishes or sipping cocktails like our signature margarita, the restaurant's warm ambiance and prime location attract a diverse crowd, including the University of Utah students who love the flavorful dishes and wonderful, lively atmosphere. El Cholo is a favorite gathering spot for locals and visitors alike. 2166 South 900th East, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84106, phone number 385-426-2166. Other locations in Los Angeles, Santa Monica, downtown LA, Anaheim Hills, Corona del Mar, and La Habra. elcholo.com, that's elcholo.com. News bulletin for the El Cholo outlet in Salt Lake City. 10% off your check minus alcohol for the month of January. This brings us to the Mario boat lift. Castro emptied out his prisons and his insane asylums and sent inmates in mental cases to the U.S. Carter initially welcomed them with open arms and open hearts until public opinion turned sour.
Forever known as Mariolitos, the wave of immigrants created political headaches for U.S. President Jimmy Carter when his administration failed to develop a consistent response to the mass wave of new arrivals. While the Cuban economy ultimately suffered a serious downturn after the Mariel boat lift, it was later learned that Castro had intentionally forced addicts, prostitutes, criminals, the mentally ill and unproductive slackers onto the flotilla at Mariel Harbor, effectively flushing Cuba's toilet onto the United States, as Castro boasted after his decision to allow the boat lift.
The Refugee Education Assistance Act of 1980 provided $100 million in cash, medical, and social services to facilitate the Mariel refugees' transition to American life. Many believe that accepting the Mariel boat lift partly cost President Jimmy Carter his re-election.
Decency.
Now to the economy under Carter. Inflation, by the time he left office, rose to 13.5%, and gas prices doubled. People of a certain age remember the ridiculously long lines for gas and the government-mandated plan to enable motorists to get gas.
This is unreal. Isn't this disgusting? Why doesn't anybody contact the president? Why is he letting this happen to us?
To sum up in the word of one irate motorist, the first day of the odd-even system was a disaster. Gas lines at many stations were a lot longer than normal.
The line today is longer than it's ever been. I have no explanation for it.
This gas line at one station on the Upper West Side ran from 96th Street and West End Avenue all the way up to 102nd Street. As might be expected, the longer the line and waiting time, the angrier some motorists became.
I think it's terrible. I really think it's terrible. I'm in here for an hour already.
There's no shortage. I don't believe there's a shortage.
The odd-even system can't do anything about the problem of no gas. Some of the people on line here have been in other lines and still don't have a tank of gas.
This is the second gas line this morning.
What happened at the first?
They ran out.
I've been in 2 gas lines already.
This morning?
This morning.
How long did you wait for the first one?
I've been in both lines over an hour, and I'm out of gas. Dead out.
Most service station operators were not following the new regulations to the letter. Drivers with more than a half a tank of gas should have been turned away, but no one was checking.
I don't intend doing that. It's too risky.
This morning we're a little short on help, so we are not checking gauges. But from what the purchases have been, there really is no need because they're all getting large sales.
What are we trying to do?
Well, my son is trying to see how much gas we have left in the tank and whether we can make it out on the Sawmill River Parkway. So he stuck his walkie-talkie antenna in the tank, which I do not see we're going to get out.
Well, all you motorists with odd number plates, tomorrow, it's your turn. I'm Frank Casey, Action News.
But Carter was a moral and decent man, right? Quote, Carter, in fact, benefited magnificently from the largest of the Islamic world's worst human rights violators. Saudi Arabia bailed out Carter's peanut farm in 1976 in a murky pre-election loan transaction worth over $2.5 million in current dollars, using warehouse peanuts, which apparently had already been sold as collateral. The Carter Center has been funded primarily by tens of millions of dollars from Arab despots, including those with think tanks promoting Holocaust denial and claims that Zionists, not Nazis, killed Europe's Jews, and by the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, BCCI, history's largest criminal banking and money laundering enterprise. Carter traveled with the slippery BCCI founder and chairman, Pakistani Adnan Hassan Abedi, making introductions to the rich and powerful. BCCI was later discovered to have helped finance the Islamist takeover of Iran, the Saudi bin Laden group, and assorted terror and narcotics operations, end of quote. After Carter's book, in which he called Israel apartheid, some 14 Jewish members of the Carter Center's advisory board resigned, including its first director, who then wrote a scathing review attacking Carter's book.
Decency. Decency.
Now to President Biden. After 10 million illegal aliens intentionally allowed to enter the country, high inflation, gas prices 50% higher than when he entered office, the disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, his embarrassing debate with Trump, and being unceremoniously thrown out of the window by Democrat leaders in favor of Kamala Harris, the commutation of death penalties for killers, including killers of children. How will Biden be remembered?
But Joe Biden's record with regard to the things that he's accomplished, I think will stand the test of time. Now, what my dear friend Scott and others will talk about, and quite frankly, I'm going to say this, rightfully so, it was very disturbing to learn late in the year about just how poor his health has become. And like many, I did not realize that it had gotten to that point. That being said, I think he showed up for the job. He got the work done. I think some of the accomplishments also in the Middle East and foreign policy will also stand the test of time.
You think the Middle East is in better shape today than when he took office?
Well, I think he got our hostages home. I think that's a big deal. I think it's important.
I'm sorry, which hostages?
He's gotten a number of people home. He was able.
There's still 100 people over there.
Well, there were more than
including some Americans. Look, I think he's gonna leave office in disgrace. The Hunter Biden pardon was disgraceful. He's going to be remembered largely for inflation and for the disastrous Afghanistan pullout. And I think as we continue to, we're just getting the first draft of this now, but as we continue to learn about the massive cover-up that went on, not about his health, but about his mental acuity, to cover that up, the efforts that were undertaken by the White House staff, by his family, not in the last couple of months, but for all 4 years, I think it's going to be a really ugly chapter. It's a diminished presidency because of it. And I think we still don't know the full extent of what they did to try to hide what they've been doing over in the West.
But hey, at least he showed up for work, right?
That being said, I think he showed up for the job. He got the work done. He showed up for the job.
Did he?
You know, I looked this up today. 40% of Joe Biden's presidency has been spent on vacation. That is roughly 550 days. Now, if you do a little math, it would take the average American 48 years to rack up that many vacation days. As you sort of look back on the last 4 years, is it a little bit frightening that we had a president who mentally and physically wasn't even there?
Hey, where's the beef? I don't think there's anybody back there.
And Biden, in a recent interview, said he wished he hadn't dropped out of the race and that he would have beaten Donald Trump. And because life's too short, I didn't even mention Biden's lawfare against Trump and the Biden crime family that allegedly pocketed up to $27 million. Let's just focus on the Biden crime family and China.
Peter Schweitzer is the author of the new book, Red-Handed, How American Elites Get Rich, Helping China Win, the #1 book right now on Amazon. He joins me this morning. Peter, good morning to you. Thanks very much. Your reaction to what you just heard at that Joe Biden and when we heard from him in October 2020, right before the election.
Yeah, it's a pretty remarkable saying. I mean, I guess technically it's true in that he didn't directly take the money, but as we point out in the book, Hunter Biden complained to family members that he was having to send half of his money to Pop, meaning his father. That's money he collected overseas. And there's plenty of evidence of him paying his father's bills while he was vice president of the United States. And all of that money came from foreign sources. So Joe Biden is being deceptive and not honest with the American people when he makes that statement.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a graphic here of a text from Hunter Biden to his daughter, Naomi, and he says, I hope you all can do what I did and pay for everything for the entire family for 30 years. It's really hard, but don't worry, unlike Pop, Joe, I won't make you give me half your salary. So what was going on? Hunter Biden is rolling in the dough, and he's paying all the family bills?
Yeah, he's paying a lot of the family bills, and some of the money from China we know goes to James Biden. What's important, Maria, to understand is that, people want to think of this as a Hunter Biden problem or just a corruption problem. When you look at the origins of this money, we wanted to look at the deals that Hunter Biden got in China and figure out who opened the door and made those deals happen. And I have to tell you, Maria, of the 5 deals we know of, every single one of them points to an official in China who has links to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence, meaning the Vice Minister for State Security, who has responsibility for foreign recruitments, the former Minister of State Security's family himself. The list goes on and on. So this is not just a question anymore of corruption, self-dealing, self-enrichment. You have to start asking the question, China had a concerted effort to, let's say, undermine this family, and this family, I would say, we have to ask serious questions about whether they're compromised.
Now then, how about we ask some non-historians what they think of Biden and how they think Biden will be remembered?
Thanks, Larry. Hey, Willie Nelson here, reporting from Los Angeles, where Joe Biden's approval rating is dropping faster than his train of thought. As his presidency stumbles to a close, we're hitting the streets to find out what people really think of his time in office. Can anyone name an accomplishment, or are they struggling to remember, just like Joe? Let's find out.
Yeah, I hated him. I think because he did nothing for us. Prices went up crazy, and I've been broke for the last 4 years.
Our work isn't done. What do you think the worst thing he did was?
I think the worst thing he did was give all that money to Ukraine for no reason.
How do you think the history books will write him? What are your thoughts?
They're gonna write him as a warmonger.
Unfavorably, overwhelmingly unfavorable. For him, he held on to power too long.
When do you think he should have relinquished power?
Oh, he should have announced that he was only running one term 2 years into his presidency.
My memory is not good. My memory is fine.
Would you have rather seen a primary play out in the Democratic Party?
Yeah, that would have been nice.
I think an example of what shouldn't happen with the whole Ukraine thing is just like, where's our money going? We're suffering here. So it's like, where exactly is our money? It don't make sense. Nothing has made sense these last 4 years.
And that's why today I'm proud to announce a new $2.4 billion package.
Well, given the tough circumstances with COVID, I think it was kind of a tough go either way. But I think, he did a respectable job.
Do you think history books will reflect positively or negatively on him?
I think that it'll be, maybe not quite as good as the Obama administration, but not negatively. So pretty okay.
Thank you, Joe.
I feel like it was pretty lukewarm. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, what would you rate his presidency?
Ooh, okay. A 6?
That's pretty mediocre.
One could say that, yeah. Hopefully the future is looking brighter for the next 10, 20, 30 years.
He's probably one of the worst presidents of my lifetime. Straight up. I'm 31 years old. Probably one of the worst presidents to affect my life. I've never had a president mess up as far as individuals lives. As far as that's my opinion on him. He's probably one of the worst presidents in history, and he just affected a lot of people's lives.
What do you think was the worst thing he did in the last 4 years?
That Ukraine stuff was kind of ridiculous to me. Just the amount of money that they were giving him. Man, there's people dying here. There's people struggling here. We got homeless problems. Look around. The homeless are everywhere. It's there's people struggling, people working jobs, trying to make an honest living that can't even make it.
How I'll remember him, the dude was just a puppet, honestly, for the Democratic Party. The guy barely knew what he was talking about half of the time. If you see his presidential address, and whenever he was talking in front of the White House, he would always stutter.
If Joe Biden is a puppet, who do you think is pulling the strings?
Oh, it's easy. It was Kamala Harris, and it was the Democratic Party.
How do you think the history books will remember him?
As a bad president. I didn't really care too much for him. I don't feel like he really did anything.
How do you think history books will remember him?
Destroying the economy, maybe?
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I do remember when I first came here, it was decent economy, decent prices, decent living. Last 4 years, for me, it's been awful. Everything increasing the prices, especially the cost of living. It's pretty high. I can tell almost 80% extra. So it's affecting most of the people right now.
What's the worst thing that you think he did during his tenure?
Not focusing internally in the nation here. Most of his attention focusing on other countries' problems, not inside the home, which is I think the President Trump, his campaign focusing inside the home, focusing on his people, focusing to support the economy, make America great again.
How will history books remember him? Well, definitely will remember him by inflation. Inflation going up, tripling down on everyone's pocket, their home, their food.
What do you think is the worst thing he did over the last 4 years?
That immigration thing, bringing everybody in and not allowing us as American citizens to excel in the things that we need to excel here, giving them things to excel in. And I don't think that was a fair thing to do.
He's got some negative PR right now, but I think he was one of the best people we ever had.
What do you think his best accomplishment was over the last 4 years?
I mean, all his accomplishments were silent by some, I don't know, but some strange thing. Maybe because people want changes, and this is why they voted for Trump, which is fine with me. But I think his accomplishments should not be silent. I would vote his presidency 9.5.
That's all from Los Angeles, where Botox is cheaper than rent. This is Willie Nelson, your man on the street.
Honestly, I forgot we had a president these last few months.
Not a lot of hair, sleeps a lot, sometimes is there, mostly not.
Yeah, I mean, Epstein's list, all that stuff, you know what I mean?
Do you ever wake up and realize your life has no purpose?
Do I have a death wish, Morgan asked. Maybe I did. I thought this would be our final run ever. We had made millions and millions of dollars, but God had other plans.
Peter Lowe, the one-time drug dealer turned pastor, along with 2 others, will be executed at 12 midnight local time.
You can be in heaven or you can be in hell. The choice is yours. I found Christ in here, and he forgave me.
My name is Peter Lowe, and I will be executed in 2 hours.
Jesus is for free, and salvation is a gift. Do you believe in Jesus?
Blue Line Moving is a veteran-owned full-service moving company dedicated to serving families across South Florida, as well as nationwide over the past 10 years. Whether it's moving furniture, organizing items, or packing your belongings, we go the extra mile to make sure it's all done right. We provide clients with an affordable and stress-free moving experience every step of the way. BlueLineMovingAndStorage.com. That's BlueLineMovingAndStorage.com. Trust in the media is at an all-time low. Wonder why?
That would be, to me, Joe Biden's obvious cognitive decline that became undeniable in the televised debate.
At the presidential debate with Donald Trump.
Unquestioned. And, you know, it's starting to emerge now that his advisors kind of managed his limitations. It's been reported in the Wall Street Journal for 4 years, and yet he insisted that he could still run for president. We should have much more forcefully questioned whether he was fit for office for another 4 years, which could have led to a primary for the Democrats. It could have changed the scope of the entire election. Yeah. Yet, still, incredibly, we read in the Washington Post that his advisors are saying that he regrets that he dropped out of the race. You know, that he thinks he could have beaten Trump. And I think that is either delusional or they're gaslighting.
President Biden has said repeatedly he was sick during the debate June 27th in Atlanta, and he's always been fine, and he leaves fine. That is his position, the position of many of his top aides as well, even though there is that reporting.
But wait, there's more.
Number 10, ignore your eyes. Those are cheap fakes.
There's a growing and insidious trend in right-wing media, broadcast, print, and social media. It is to take highly misleading and selectively edited videos of President Biden directly from Republican National Committee social media accounts and then use those videos to spread messages virally to cast doubt on President Biden's fitness for office. Here is this headline from the New York Post, quote, Biden appears to freeze up, has to be led off stage by Obama at Megabucks LA fundraiser. The full video posted by Biden finance chair on Twitter shows something entirely different. Biden reacting to applause and then walking off stage with former President Obama. It comes less than 1 week after the New York Post made a cover out of another piece of deceptively edited tape, calling him meanderer-in-chief due to what they claim was Biden walking away during a skydiving demonstration during the G7 summit last week. Biden was going over to congratulate one of the skydivers. The articles are based on cheap fakes, videos of real events that are intentionally manipulated to fool viewers.
Number 9, CNN thinks America is a democracy.
There's a lot of criticisms of Trump that he is
bad for democracy, that he's bad for American democracy.
Okay, we are a republic.
We're a republic.
We are not a democracy.
Republic. We're not a democracy. I've heard a lot of conspiracy theories. I hear a lot of things out on the road. But to hear Americans, people who would describe themselves as patriots, say that America is not a democracy, that stopped me in my tracks.
You are hearing people say America is not a democracy because there are people around Trump who want them to be saying that, who've been planting that narrative.
Number 8. Beyonce is performing at the DNC.
There are rumors that Beyonce might make an appearance. I personally think that that's true.
Is the United Center going to be turning into the Beehive tonight?
The Beehive is buzzing right now because the preparation for the Beehive, it has to start early.
A donor confirmed to me that she's also hearing that Beyonce is en route.
Beyonce is going to show up. Queen Bay.
Breaking Beyonce news.
Number 7. The media tries to scare people about Project 2025.
The far-right manifesto puts forth sealing the border, and it seeks to do so with military force. It aims to use every lever of government to find, detain, and deport undocumented people, take funding and housing away from people who are just associated with undocumented immigrants. Quote, deny loan assistance to those who are not U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents.
Number 6. Media tries to hype up the amount of misinformation on X.
After Elon Musk took over in 2022, most of its fact-checkers were fired. Now the site is rife with trash talk and lies. Little would you know that this, said to be footage from Gaza, is really from a video game. Eventually, X users added a warning label. These are AI-generated images of, well, see for yourself. Did your research find that there was more misinformation spread by conservatives?
Absolutely. X has turned into a haven for the spread of misinformation. Since buying the site almost 2 years ago, Musk's site has struggled to control it on topics ranging from the election to the assassination attempt against Trump.
Number 5. Tim Walz is the best. J.D. Vance is the worst.
Midwestern dad, like super clean-cut vibe.
Everybody likes
right?
Tim Walz.
So plain-spoken and relatable.
Pretty moderate Democrat.
Very moderate record.
A new moderate.
He's right down the middle.
He's not just an old white man.
Tim Walz beats America, you know.
Talks like a regular person.
Tim Walz is the opposite of weird.
Populist approach to fear on the Republican side, and the happy populism that Tim Walz is on the ticket on the Democratic side.
Happy warriors. Happy warriors. He was certainly the happy warrior last night.
A happy warrior, folksy backstory.
Wicked sense of humor. Look how happy the pig looks. That's good.
And J.D. Vance is weird, extreme, and angry.
Utter humorlessness.
It's hard to believe that J.D. Vance could be any more extreme.
It's like a freak show of bros.
Dark and ugly beneath the dignity of most politicians.
J.D. Vance.
J.D. is at the far extreme. The most extreme. Being one of the most extreme.
Angry and mean and dark. This guy is really weird, y'all.
Number 4. Very, very bad things will happen if Trump wins.
Think about what happens if all of our access to health care goes away next Tuesday. The stakes literally are life and death for every woman in America. It's not hyperbole. It's not an exaggeration.
Trump will fulfill his promise to be a dictator on day one.
Sets up a network of camps.
Extraordinarily erratic foreign policy in the Middle East.
Doing profound and possibly permanent damage to American democracy.
If historians in the future are allowed to write books, and by the way, that question is open this morning, and if people are allowed to go on television and say what they think in the future, which again, that question is open this morning, that's what happens when strong men come to power. That happened in Italy in the 1920s and 1930s, Germany in the 1930s. Suspend the Constitution, pit the Justice Department, the Defense Department against political enemies, and run this country out of the White House.
Number 3. Joe Biden would never pardon his son because he is such a great guy.
Presidential promise to put the law before family.
The president has ruled out pardoning his son.
Pledging not to pardon his son.
To sit there and say, well, I'm not going to intervene in the legal process, and I wouldn't pardon my son. Democrats and Joe Biden protecting the justice system.
Our current president of the United States has
so much respect for the law that he has said he would not pardon his son.
And Joe Biden has very clearly said he would not pardon his son, he would not commute his sentence. How can Republicans keep making this argument now that Joe Biden has really put it out there?
He's not doing it because he is living what it means to have a rule of law in this country. Yeah. And it isn't, I mean, if you want to know if he believes it, you could actually see what is happening with his own son.
Even President Biden saying in a statement that he would respect the outcome of this case.
This was a good day for the system, good day for sort of America as an example of how the rule of law should work.
We're coming on the air this hour with breaking news. President Biden has just pardoned his son Hunter.
Number 2, media gets caught editing interviews to help Kamala Harris.
When we talk about bringing down prices and making life more affordable for people, what are 1 or 2 specific things you have in mind for that?
Well, I'll start with this. I grew up a middle-class kid. My mother raised my sister and me. She worked very hard. She was able to finally save up enough money to buy our first house when I was a teenager. I grew up in a community of hardworking people, you know, construction workers and nurses and teachers. And I try to explain to some people who may not have had the same experience, you know, but a lot of people will relate to this. You know, I grew up in a neighborhood of folks who were very proud of their lawn, you know?
When we talk about bringing down prices and making life more affordable for people, what are 1 or 2 specific things you have in mind for that?
So when I talk about building an opportunity economy, it is very much with the mind of investing in the ambitions and aspirations and the incredible work ethic of the American people.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Number 1, there's no cognitive decline. In fact, Biden has never been better.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
She knows so long as she was 9.
In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
President Biden has a photographic memory, but he's totally focused. He's very sharp.
They say he's sharp in meetings and so on.
Very lucid, very well informed.
He's older. That doesn't mean that he is unfit. He can clear a dementia bar, and that's probably a win.
More wild speculation from a bunch of people who have probably never been in a room with Joe Biden and certainly don't have medical degrees that I'm aware of.
But a huge part of the Mueller report talks about Russian disinformation tactics. And one of the themes this election cycle is that Joe Biden is too old to lead. And so everyone is seizing upon this. And it is a classic disinformation tactic.
And the media, along with Biden-Harris staffers, lied for 4 years about Biden's mental decline. Isn't it a delicious irony that had they not done that, Democrats could have had a real primary and perhaps nominated somebody who might have even defeated Donald Trump?
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
I meet frequently with the president, and every single time I meet with him, he is just fine. How people interpret that is up to them, but I engage with him frequently and alert, sound, does his homework, reads the papers, reads all the read-ahead material, and is very, very engaging in issues of very serious matters of war and peace and life and death. So if the American people are worried about an individual who is someone who's making decisions of war and peace and has access to, makes the decisions of nuclear weapons and that sort of thing, I think they can rest easy.
The president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. I can't even keep up with him. We just got back from New Mexico. We just got back from California. That is not a question that we should be even asking. Just look at the work that he does. Look how he's delivering for the American public. Look, that article that we're talking about is hearsay. It's salacious. That's not what we care about.
I know that Joe Biden is not on the ballot. I understand that. But the reason that you are at the top of the ticket is because he dropped out of this race. And so I want to ask you, and it was largely because of that debate performance back in June. You defended him in the days before and in the days after as you were campaigning for another 4 years for President Biden. Can you say that you were honest with the American people about what you saw in those moments with President Biden as you were with him again and again, repeatedly in that time?
Of course. Joe Biden is an extremely accomplished, experienced, and capable in every way that anyone would want if they're president.
If you're concerned about Joe Biden's age, you probably don't know Joe Biden.
Biden is actually in good shape.
Right. Mentally, he's quite acute.
Any aide who engages with him or reporters, we can see this. The gears of his mind are working.
The right-wing media has so fixated on Biden and Biden purportedly having cognitive issues.
It's not just making an issue of Biden's age. It's lying. It's saying he's senile. It's saying he's demented. Saying he's out of it.
Russian television has been filled with speculation about President Biden's age, about his mental state of mind.
That's an issue pushed by right-wing media, but it's not correct.
Yeah, Republicans on the other side have spent 4 years almost kind of weaponizing Biden's age against him. Trump is not that much younger than him.
Biden is just a couple of years older than Donald Trump.
Why so much attention on Biden's age? Trump isn't much younger.
This whole vein is really, really unseemly. I mean, ageism.
I'm going to say quite bluntly, there is some ageism going on here.
Yeah, I think there is some ageism going on.
Biden's personal physician wrote that he, quote, remains a healthy, vigorous 80-year-old male.
He is a healthy, vigorous 80-year-old male.
He had a good physical. His doctor says he's vigorous.
The reality is nothing like the dystopian picture that the Republicans are trying to paint of this senile, doddering president, and he's as sharp as a tack.
And the media has spent decades and decades explaining away, minimizing, or covering up Joe Biden's gaffes.
First mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice-looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
There's a part of Biden that feels more Reagan-esque that way. You're like, it's Grandpa, it's Uncle Joe.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Those that Joe moments are part of his political charm.
I'm beginning to see why your wife left you.
So much of what is appealing about him to a lot of voters is the fact that he's authentic.
I got hairy legs.
The fact that he doesn't always seem scripted.
The kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down. Your AR-14s are what. Okay, this is not okay. Hold on. All right. Hey, let's go. Don't tell me to do that. There's a lot of guys.
Biden yesterday showed the other side of his humanity, and that is he's a fighter.
You're full.
And some people see that as charming, a candidate who's willing to air it out face-to-face with a guy.
This is going to be a net plus for Joe Biden.
Ashton Carter, Joe Biden, the vice president, was swearing him in to be defense secretary. He waved his wife over and little hands-on treatment from the vice president.
Everybody knows he's a touchy-feely guy, and he's just very friendly.
He is.
He was reportedly comforting her after she fell on ice.
It's spreading love.
Coon said Maggie was not uncomfortable at all.
They're going to put you all back in chains.
He's making an historic reference he may not have been right to do, but it certainly wasn't malignant.
I'm not even sure it had anything to do with race.
Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone.
Still, he is a master of the quick recovery.
Make sure the kids hear words.
These qualities are almost endearing to voters.
We choose truth over facts.
They find him more believable because he makes missteps every every so often.
All right, Chuck, thank you very much.
All right, it's Chris, but anyway.
These gaffes are also a part of who he is as a politician.
We've never allowed any crisis from the Civil War straight through to the pandemic of 17, all the way around 16. We have never let our democracy take second fiddle. We can both have a democracy and elections and at the same time correct the public health.
Why isn't your bank asking what's in your heart? When big banks cancel your account because they don't like your politics, or they share your transaction data with the government, it's no wonder they don't ask what's in your heart. That's not what they care about. Old Glory Bank is different. We're the pro-America online bank that protects your privacy, security, and liberty. Started by Dr. Ben Carson, Larry Elder, and John Rich, we proudly serve customers in all 50 states. Open your account in minutes at oldglorybank.com. We stand with you.
Is it in our best interest to bring in really sharp foreigners who add something to our economy that Americans do not? Yes. But when H-1B visas are used to bring in people who can do work Americans can and are doing, but will do it for less, that's called an abuse.
The rideshare company Uber has fired more than 1,000 workers since July, mostly Americans. That's about 2% of its workforce. Meanwhile, during the same period, the federal government has approved hundreds of new H-1B visas for Uber. And that means they can replace those workers with foreign scabs who will work for less. It's like outsourcing, but even easier because Uber doesn't even have to build a new building. Now, there's nothing unusual about what Uber is doing. There's bipartisan consensus in Washington that we desperately need smart people from overseas to do the jobs that Americans are too badly educated to do. No reason to fix our schools or make sure higher education is serious and non-frivolous. We can just import people from countries that take education seriously. And that's what we do. That's why the U.S. government passes out foreign worker visas to allow corporations to replace people like you with people who live 6,000 miles away. Now, you probably haven't even heard of the F1 optional practical training program, but in just 4 years, from 2009 to 2013, that program replaced nearly 500,000 American jobs. The program allows foreign students who studied American universities to stay in the country after they graduate. In other words, we're just going to staple a green card to their diploma. You probably heard that phrase recently. And since employers who use F-1B visas are not required to pay payroll taxes, they get, in effect, a tax subsidy for hiring foreigners over U.S. citizens. How's that for America last? Maybe the program would make sense if Americans really couldn't fill all those jobs, but it turns out there are plenty who could. Just ask the thousands who were recently laid off by Uber. According to the Economic Policy Institute, fully half of all American STEM majors, that is people who study technology, don't end up working in STEM jobs. Isn't that weird? The only people who actually benefit from these visa programs are tech billionaires in Silicon Valley. They're getting richer no matter what. And the foreign nationals who want to live in San Francisco. And our government makes it easy for them to do that. Who gets hurt? Well, among others, the college graduates who took on huge amounts of student loan debt only to be dumped into a system where their foreign replacements get preference over them. This is happening on a grand scale, and both parties are for it, including many Republicans in Washington. It tells you a lot about where their priorities are.
Now get this, because some Republicans are concerned about H-1B visas and others defend them, Don Lemon says this exposes Republicans' true racist colors. They don't want people who don't look like them.
Finding out, you dumb idiots. Now you're just figuring out. You're so stupid and you deserve it. You deserve it because you're so dumb. Jim, it's hypocrisy. So go with me here. Yes, I am gloating over your stupidity and how you were taken. I'm cackling in Kamala, says in Shanta. You have been co-opted because you're in a cult and you don't even realize it because you have stupid MAGA brain and you don't get it. How stupid and dumb are you? And I'm just going to I can't wait to go through this. Okay. So I'm going to read this again. So Krishnan's appointment triggered an anti-Indian backlash on social media, particularly given his past advocacy for increasing green cards and immigration broadly. Oh no, immigration. We can't do the immigration because it's hot in here, guys. Sorry. Woo! Thank you. We can't do the immigration because you know, the immigration, it triggers some people. You know what they're saying about the anti-immigrant stuff, right? Who's in to say that one of the jobs you might be seeking won't be one of those white jobs? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Don Lemon needs help.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
My only question is, what took CNN so long to fire this dude?
You're so dumb.
Now, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, promised to solve the homeless problem in San Francisco, where he served 2 terms as mayor by the end of his 2nd term. Have you been to San Francisco? The homeless should have 4 options. Go to a bed that's available, rehab, mental institution, or jail. Now, Gavin Newsom recently went to Skid Row after spending $24 billion on homelessness. He didn't exactly get a ticker tape greeting.
Come to Skid Row, but now you need to see afterwards. You see how dirty these streets is? The streets ain't being clean. There ain't no trash cans. See the red trash cans? The red trash cans belong to the business people. They don't belong to the city. The city just brings out one trash can. They got one trash can.
Governor, do you speak Spanish well? I think you do, right? No? There's a woman back there that was talking about her kids getting taken while she's living in a tent. It's happening every day.
Always been a housing first framework.
Yeah, but what counts as housing?
Focus away from interim. We have a higher level of scrutiny. Interim housing that was reinforced.
Not safe is not working.
So interim housing isn't being prioritized with the new HAP funding?
The HAP money, the prioritization continues to be a framework, not housing. Services, shelter, solves sleep, housing, and supported services.
I know, but like
homelessness.
Yeah.
Interim housing has a role. Rapid rehousing is important. I'm not opposed to shelters, but those are decisions for your local government.
Do you have a site or social, or are you doing this for yourself?
We're from Los Angeles Community Action Network.
Okay.
Just always wary when more money is coming for homelessness and housing, and not being able to concretely define what housing is, because we see, you know, Mayor Bass's so-called success on Inside Safe, where 1/3 of the people that have gone into these hotels have already been either exited or dead.
No, I get it.
And they're not going to permanent housing.
This new round has a whole bunch of accountability and transparency, where they're going to have to list everything they're doing, and there's monthly reports that are now required.
Yeah, but I mean, the definition of, like, what is housing, you know what I mean? I'm not saying people.
Well, you'll be able to see what they think it is, and then you can react to that.
And how much? It's $370 for LA?
Yeah.
For the county or for?
Well, it's $837 in this round, but yeah, around $370 for LA City and County.
Okay.
That's round 5. We got round 6 coming later. That's about $1 billion.
Don't want photo out. We want compassion, sir. From a positive perspective, though, if you really want to know the truth about the criminalization, you need to stop right here. This is the Los Angeles Community Action Network. Right? Place you need to come and holler at us. This is where I work at. Where you work, right? This is where I work at, right? Why come they didn't invite us to the meeting? Then we'll let you know, man. They don't want to know the truth and what's going on. All right, we got mutual aid spots out here helping because we can't get nothing else. We got to do it for ourselves. You can see things from a direct perspective, how it is, right? Or you can see it from a criminalization perspective. But that ain't going to get it, because that's been the problem. Chief Crichton came through here. And I was on cop watch, monitored him, and we sent him out of here. America's top cop couldn't do it. So if America's top cop can't do it, it ain't to be done.
Take care, man.
All right.
Good to spend time with you.
All right, thank you.
Nice day.
All right, remember you walk with the general.
Hard to forget.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna let you know that. All right, do the
Finally.
Hey, you get down the fiddle and you get down the bow. Kick off your shoes and you throw them on the floor. Dance in the kitchen till the morning line. Louisiana Saturday night.
Take it away, Maestro.
A good evening. Tonight our concert is with the Paris Bell Harmonic, the house orchestra. I have a hunch they'll give us a wonderful performance under the baton of Maestro.
The old switcheroo.
All right. That's good.
No! No! What?
Okay. Okay, cool. Now take your hand out slowly.
Okay.
Yep. Nice and slow.
Perfect. Oh my god.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
What?
And then keep your feet straight.
No, I didn't.
Che cos'è? Apri gli occhi? Sì, guarda. È questo.
No! Dai, Shakiri! Cosa posso fare?
What was it?
What do you think it was?
What do you think it was? Look.
What is that, dude?
Open up.
Get him. Serious?
Sometimes it's really tough to cheer up a friend who's despondent.
It was about a man who lost his wife. Rather careless. And he was saying that he was very sorry about this to a friend of his at the work. And the friend said, well, you miss her, do you? He said, yes. He said, I miss the talk in the evening. So he said, well, buy a budgie. He said, a what? He said, a budgerigar. You know, a little bird. He said, buy it because they talk very nice and it'll cheer you up no end. So he saw him a couple of days later. He said, did you get the budgie? He said, yes, I did, actually. He said, does it talk? No, he said, it doesn't talk at all. Don't he? That's unusual. He said, well, I'll tell you what to do. He said, buy him a mirror. And he'll have a look at himself in the mirror and probably start talking to himself. Try it. He said, well, I will. They met the next day. He said, did you get the mirror? He said, just got the mirror. He said, is he talking? No, not a word. He said, I'll tell you what to do. Buy him a bell. That'll do the trick. A bell. He'll sort of nibble about with his beak, and he'll talk all right. Buy him a bell. So I saw him a couple of days later. He said, get the bell. He said, yes. He said, is he talking? No, not talking. He said, I'll tell you what to do. Buy him a little ladder. Maybe he's a bit liverish. That's why he's not talking. Get the ladder, and he'll run up and down the ladder, and he'll talk. So we saw him a couple of days later. It was 3 days, actually, a long weekend, I remember. And he said, is he talking? He said, no, he's dead. I said, he's dead? Yeah, he's dead. Cool. He said, he did say something just before he died. He said, what was it? He said, food.
Hope you enjoyed We've Got a Country to Save, brought to you by my friends at InvestYrefi.com. Invest in America like I do. And by Freedom Chat. Freedom Chat has true end-to-end encryption, no storage of messages on their server, and no commercial use of user data. That way you can speak freely and message privately. Download the app today and subscribe to my Freedom Chat channel at Larry Elder for exclusive posts and never-before-seen content. We also thank Epic Times, Old Glory Bank, Patriot Mobile, and El Cholo. Be sure to like and subscribe to our podcast. Make sure to follow or subscribe to my channel on whatever platform you are using, whether X, YouTube, Facebook, or Rumble. And remember, we've got a country to save.
Everybody deserves a shot. Everybody.
2024 election fried our brains. The Democrats couldn't hold a primary because they were too busy holding a body upright. Are we still rolling? Am I off?
Go for it.
It was amazing that the pro-choice party didn't give their voters one when it came to the presidential candidate. Kamala was forced on us so hard you'd think she was patented by Pfizer or Moderna, whichever one's, oh God. Andy just gave me a very scary look.
No!